Welcome back to ABA Chapter Chat. Today, we're going to be doing a deep dive into reflexes and conditioned reflexes from Chapter 4 of Science and Human Behavior.
Sounds good.
And we're going to be looking at how understanding these concepts can really help us be more effective in our ABA work.
Yeah, these concepts are really foundational to understanding how behavior works, which is at the core of ABA practice.
Exactly. The chapter starts by connecting movement with life. It's how we recognize that something is alive. And behavior is like the ultimate expression of that, right?
Exactly. In ABA, we focus on behavior because it's the primary way we interact with and learn about the world. It's measurable and observable, and it's the key to understanding how we function.
Yeah. And the chapter then takes us all the way back to the 17th century with Descartes.
Oh, wow.
He was fascinated by these mechanical toys, like the ones moving in these elaborate gardens, and watching them sparked this idea in him. What if our muscles react to external triggers, like those toys do?
Interesting. So Descartes thought that muscles might work like hydraulic systems, responding to external forces. And while his theory about fluids wasn't accurate, his observation that external stimuli could influence behavior was really revolutionary.
It's amazing how these early thinkers kind of paved the way for our understanding of reflexes today. So let's break down what a reflex actually is.
So think of a reflex as like a super fast, involuntary response to a specific stimulus. Basically, your body goes on autopilot reacting before you even have time to think about it.
Okay, so like touching a hot stove and instantly pulling your hand back, that's a reflex.
Exactly, or the knee-jerk reflex at the doctor's office. These reflexes are crucial for survival, helping us adapt quickly to changes in our environment.
So reflexes are vital, but can they explain everything about human behavior?
That's where things get more complex. Reflexes are important, but they're just one piece of the puzzle. They can't explain the intricate behaviors we see, like learning new skills, solving problems, or making decisions. Those require a different mechanism. Conditioning, exactly.
Ooh, I'm intrigued. I know we've all heard of Pavlov and his dogs, but how does that fit into this whole picture?
So Pavlov's work was groundbreaking. He started by studying digestion, but he stumbled upon something fascinating. Dogs drooling even without food present. He called this psychic secretion, and it led him to explore how associations are formed.
Okay, so the dogs weren't just randomly drooling. Something in their environment was triggering that response even without food being there.
Exactly. Pavlov meticulously designed experiments to understand this phenomenon. He paired a neutral stimulus, like a bell, with a meaningful stimulus, which was food, which naturally caused the dogs to salivate.
So he was basically manipulating their environment to see how their responses changed.
Precisely. What he discovered was that after repeated pairings, the bell alone could trigger salivation. The dogs had learned to associate the bell with food, even when the food wasn't present. And this is the essence of classical conditioning. A previously neutral stimulus becomes linked with a meaningful one, leading to a learned response.
That's incredible. It's like rewiring the brain to make these new connections between things. But how does this relate to our work in ABA?
Pavlov's research was crucial because it moved the field of behavior study away from assumptions and towards measurable observations. It showed that even seemingly complex behaviors could be broken down into these fundamental components, making them easier to study and understand.
So in a way, Pavlov helped lay the groundwork for the scientific approach we use in ABA today.
Absolutely. His rigorous methodology and focus on observable behavior were fundamental to the development of ABA as a science.
This is really fascinating stuff. So we've got these building blocks of behavior reflexes, and then we've got this powerful mechanism of conditioning. It seems like this sets the stage for a deeper understanding of how we learn and adapt.
You've hit the nail on the head. Reflexes provide the foundation, and conditioning allows us to build upon that foundation, creating more complex and adaptable behaviors.
So we've got these building blocks of behavior reflexes, and then we've got this powerful mechanism of conditioning. It seems like this sets the stage for a deeper understanding of how we learn and adapt.
You've hit the nail on the head. Reflexes provide the foundation, and conditioning allows us to build upon that foundation, creating more complex and adaptable behaviors.
That makes sense. But thinking about Pavlov's experiment, it almost seems too simple. I mean, is pairing a bell with food really all it takes to change behavior?
Well, it's more nuanced than that. While Pavlov's experiment demonstrated the basic principle, there's a whole world of complexity within classical conditioning.
So what are some of the factors that influence how conditioning works?
Well, timing is crucial. The neutral stimulus, like the bell, needs to be presented consistently right before the meaningful stimulus. This helps the brain create that strong association. The intensity of the stimuli matters too. A louder bell or a tastier treat might lead to faster conditioning. And of course, the individual's prior experiences play a huge role.
It sounds like conditioning isn't just a one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly. Each individual comes with a unique learning history, and that history shapes how they respond to different stimuli.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like we're all walking around with these intricate webs of associations built up over a lifetime of experiences.
Precisely. And that's why it's so important for ABA professionals to understand the individual's learning history. It helps us decode why certain behaviors occur and tailor our interventions more effectively.
So we're not just applying these principles blindly. We're really trying to understand the individual and their unique set of experiences.
Absolutely. It's about being a behavior detective, looking for those clues that reveal how conditioning has shaped the individual's responses.
Okay, I'm starting to see the depth of this concept, but you mentioned that conditioning isn't always about creating positive associations. Can you talk a bit more about how conditioning can sometimes lead to less desirable outcomes?
Yeah, you're right. Not all conditioned responses are beneficial. Sometimes those associations can lead to unhelpful or even harmful behaviors. Think about phobias, for example. A child who's been stung by a bee might develop a fear of all flying insects, even harmless ones.
So it's like their brain has overgeneralized the threat, associating the negative experience with a broader category of stimuli.
Exactly. It's a survival mechanism gone awry. In the wild, avoiding all potentially dangerous creatures might increase your chances of survival, but in a modern context, it can lead to unnecessary fear and avoidance.
That's a powerful example of how conditioning can work against us. But how do we address these unhelpful associations in ABA practice?
That's where understanding the principles of conditioning becomes incredibly valuable. We can use those same principles to help individuals unlearn those unhelpful responses and replace them with more adaptive ones.
So it's like we're rewiring those faulty connections, creating new pathways that lead to more positive outcomes.
Precisely. We can use techniques like systematic desensitization, where we gradually expose the individual to the feared stimulus in a safe and controlled environment, pairing it with positive experiences.
I'm starting to see how powerful this can be. By understanding the mechanisms behind these learned responses, we can actually help people overcome their fears and anxieties.
Exactly. It's about harnessing the power of conditioning for good, helping individuals break free from those unhelpful patterns and live richer, more fulfilling lives.
This is also fascinating. It's like we've been talking about this concept of stimulus substitution, where a previously neutral stimulus takes on the power to elicit a response. But I'm realizing that the whole process is way more nuanced than just swapping out one trigger for another.
You're absolutely right. There's a whole world of complexity within this seemingly simple concept. Think about the timing of the stimuli, the intensity, the individual's prior experiences. All these factors play a role in how conditioning unfolds.
So it's not just about presenting two stimuli together and hoping for the best. It's about carefully orchestrating those pairings for maximum impact.
Exactly. And that's where the art and science of ABA come together. We're using these scientific principles of conditioning, but we're also constantly observing, adjusting, and individualizing our approach based on the unique needs and responses of the people we're working with.
This all makes total sense. It's like we're taking this powerful tool of conditioning and learning how to use it with precision and care.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
We've talked a lot about the theoretical underpinnings of reflexes and conditioning, but I'm really curious to hear about how these concepts translate into concrete strategies we can use in our everyday work.
That's a great point. Let's shift gears and explore some practical applications. It's all about using this knowledge to really understand the why behind behaviors and then, design effective interventions.
Okay, that sounds good in theory, but what does it look like in practice? Can you give us some specific examples?
Absolutely. So let's say you're working with a child who has a meltdown every time they have to transition from a preferred activity to a non-preferred one.
Yeah, that's a pretty common scenario in ABA, right?
Yeah,
Transitions can be tough for a lot of kids.
exactly. So instead of just viewing this as problem behavior, we can use our understanding of conditioning to explore what might be triggering the meltdown.
So we're playing detective again, looking for those hidden connections.
Right, like has the transition been consistently paired with something negative in the past? Maybe the child was forced to leave a fun activity abruptly or experienced a frustrating situation during a previous transition?
Oh, so the meltdown might be a conditioned emotional response based on those past experiences. That's fascinating.
It is. And once we understand those triggers, we can start designing interventions to address them. We might use systematic desensitization to gradually introduce the transition, pairing it with positive reinforcement, or we could use visual supports to help the child anticipate and prepare for the change.
It's like we're creating a new set of associations, replacing those negative connections with more positive ones.
Exactly, and that's the power of understanding conditioning. It allows us to be more strategic and effective in our interventions.
This is all starting to click for me, but are there other ABA techniques that rely on these principles?
Absolutely. Think about shaping, for example. We use shaping to teach complex skills by breaking them down into smaller steps and reinforcing each step along the way. It's essentially using conditioning to gradually build the desired behavior.
Oh, so instead of expecting a child to master a skill all at once, we're using reinforcement to kind of guide them towards that goal step by step.
Precisely. And as the child experiences success at each step, they're more likely to continue engaging in the behavior, eventually leading to mastery of the entire skill.
Wow. It's amazing how we can use these principles to break down even the most complex behaviors into these manageable steps.
It really is, and the beauty of it is that these principles can be applied across a wide range of settings and situations. Whether you're working with children, adults, or even animals, understanding reflexes and conditioning can help you make a real difference.
This has been such an insightful deep dive. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on how behavior works and how we can use this knowledge to support the individuals we work with.
I'm glad to hear that. And remember, we're just scratching the surface here. There's so much more to explore within the world of behavior analysis, but hopefully this deep dive has given you a solid foundation to build upon.
It definitely has. And to all our listeners out there, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep learning, and keep applying these principles to your own practice. Thanks for joining us on ABA Chapter Chat. We'll catch you next time for another deep dive into the fascinating world of ABA.